Welcome to Boostcast 24, where we're going to explore the role of the office in 2021, and I'm delighted to be joined by two great HR directors. Claudia Osei-Nsafoah has just joined Sky, Europe's largest media business with 31,000 employees. So what role does the office play for them now? A fascinating question to ask Claudia. Her previous role was HR Director, Treasury Wine Estates, based in Shanghai, covering Asia and Europe. I'm also delighted to welcome Sam Buckingham, UK and Ireland HR Director for Nomad Foods. You'll know them better for some of their amazing brands like Birdseye, Findus, Goodfellas Pizza and Aunt Bessy's. And I'm going to ask Sam first, what's happening now in Nomad Foods?
The question is much bigger than, are we going to allow people to be flexible and will we have an office or not? Because some of the leadership skills that will be required in the future to support these remote workers or more flexible workers even are going to be very different to the types of leadership skills that people have historically built their success on. And that is where within HR, that's the kind of tension that we're having to face into now is, to me, that yes, we need to get people back into the business. That's our short-term plan, to make people show people are safe, that they're comfortable to leave their homes, for those that are quite happy cocoon. But where we really need to be thinking is, what does it look like in 2022 when hopefully we're in a more of a normal world? But what does normal mean? What's going to be left of this crisis when it comes to health and safety? The types of legacy things that will always be in place around hygiene.
Huge. And for me as well, I think it puts an even greater emphasis on diversity, because every household has a different dynamic. So if you as a big business say everyone must be at work, you can't say that, because you've got some people who have a responsibility at home for people who are vulnerable. And if you go into work and there's even a temptation of pandemic, you're putting family at risk. So that whole dynamic of health and safety is ratcheted up. Can you have one policy for our people? I don't think you can. I think you have to show more flex.
I think we have to have some sort of framework, but I don't think it's about policies and procedures. It's obviously in the factories, it's about policies and procedures and rigor because it's a production environment. In our commercial environment, it's more around providing that framework for people to understand what the role of the office is. When do we expect people to be together? Because we're not going to say do what you like, because there'll be certain moments in time when you've got to have everyone together. So we're not going to say like disband offices and just go wherever you please. So you've got to get that balance between the individual needs, to your point, the team needs and the business needs. And without that balance, something's going to give. And that's what we're trying to figure out at the moment.
Sky have about 30,000 employees, predominantly in the UK, but also within Germany and Italy. And that's made up of employees that work in the office. So we have many sites across the country, as well as engineers, people that work in the call centres as well. So it's a disparate workforce anyway, people working under different working environments is what I would say. And it's been a really interesting experience, obviously, through COVID, just to see how we navigate through that in terms of working from home. So where the positioning was certain roles needed to be in the office, I think we've proven that given the right technology and the equipment and support, you're able to facilitate working from home effectively. Can you still hear me okay?
Yes, we can, Claudia. And I'll give you some feedback as a people leader in Sky. I spoke to one of your TV producers who happens to be a friend of mine. I said, what's it been like? And he said, amazing. The support we've had from our business has been simply extraordinary. He said, I was on a call, which was a classic call like we're on now. And he mentioned that there was something at home that made working from home slightly difficult and a piece of technology would help. And didn't think again about it until a knock on the door at his house three hours later and it was one of your engineers saying, here's that equipment you need.
And do you know what, Mark? It's interesting because I had the same experience. My Wi-Fi connection was terrible, and within 3 days of joining, I already had the booster to help to extend the Wi-Fi range within my property. So yeah, absolutely. I think from a, they're very hot on customers. That's a very customer-centric organisation. But then equally, they've been able to apply that same principle and mindset to how they treat their employees as well. So it's always the mindset of nothing but the best, and whatever they can do to help facilitate ease of working is definitely the go-to. But it's also been interesting because if you're an engineer, there's a real reluctance to go into people's homes as well, right? So just how and obviously our business model is such where you need the satellite dish, you need the cabling, you need actually somebody going into your home to install the box. So that's been an interesting adjustment to see how we obviously just service customers during a time where you're not actually able to enter into people's home, and how much troubleshooting can customers do on their own without that person being physically there. So no, it's been interesting. But what I would say now is, having spent 3 weeks in the office, so I go in 1 to 2 days, which is mainly the exec team at the moment, but we are looking to wrap that up. Is our property services function has done an absolute amazing job ensuring that the social distancing markers are everywhere. You've got one-way systems, hand sanitizers, masks available, how they're managing how many people are in the lift. So you can see from a readiness perspective in terms of getting people prepared to come back to work, is spot on. And anyone that has come in, I've had a few of my team members coming a day here and a day there, they've said they feel very safe in the environment that they're in. But one thing I would say about Sky is the magic happens in the room. It's a very relationship type business, right? And you bounce ideas, those side coffee conversations that you have is where the magic happens. That's where the innovation comes from. That's where, it's just that dynamic. So I think our approach going forward is, how do we make sure that we still retain the magic with a hybrid way of working? And when I mean hybrid, it's some days in the office, some days working from home. And I think that for us is the future state, which is very different to where they were pre-COVID. But how do you maintain the magic of Sky to ensure that those conversations still happen when you're not all in the same room together? So I think that's something that we need to think about, how we retain that going forward.
Thank you, Claudia. And Sam, I'm going to come to you about a couple of themes that Claudia landed with us there. One is, you as a business, in a food business, there are two entities I'd love to hear about, because you have factories as well as offices. And the factories, in my view, are absolutely essential workers in any context. So I'd love to hear your view about that wider workforce at Nomad Foods, but also this principle of hybrid. So how's it been? What's happening in Nomad Foods from your point of view?
Thanks, Mark. So across Europe, we have 5,000 employees, more than half of which are based in our factories. So as soon as the pandemic hit, of course, you've got people working on lines, working closely together. We really need to think about how we maintain the health, safety and well-being of our factory employees. And the team there have been amazing. They've continued to produce from day one and still are producing now. And that's been done through putting in some really clear protocols, guidelines and safety measures into our factories, but also ensuring that we're recognising the effort that they're putting in, the additional shifts that they're doing, and creating a real, or building on, not creating, because they do already have a strong sense of community in these factories, but building on that to really help people to pull together in a really difficult time. So we've got social distancing measures across all of the lines, and where people can't be socially distanced, we've got perspex screens and other PPE equipment. The production in some of our factories has had to slow down slightly to accommodate for that flow. However, overall the service continues, and as we saw the massive demand in the supermarkets for our products, getting the food on the shelves is what gives our guys pride, and that's both in the factories and in the commercial teams, but also the quality of the products that we can produce still within this new or more stringent environment has continued. So I can't praise our factory teams highly enough, because they're the ones that ultimately we all rely on to be able to get the products out there. Within the commercial team, if we kind of follow the flow of the production, our commercial teams have also been working relentlessly, but they've been working from home. So to go from that environment that Claudia touched upon, where 1 minute you're sitting amongst your colleagues and you can have a quick side conversation, or you find information in the coffee room, we've gone to being dispersed throughout. And I'll focus on the UK because as the sort of HR director for Bird's Eye, it's where I see the most. We've gone to being dispersed hundreds of miles apart in some cases. And in other cases, we've got a couple of people that have gone home to Europe for a few weeks. So we're really working in this remote fashion, and they've still been able to deliver, to deal with customer demands, which, as you can imagine, the supermarket demands at this moment in time can be quite challenging, because they're equally in that position where they want to get food on the shelves, particularly in the outset. But they've really worked as a cross-functional team, a community of people pulling together, linking in with our factory colleagues, and making sure that that end-to-end supply chain is as robust as it can possibly be in a time of crisis.
Thank you, Sam. I'm going to come back to both of you. I wanted to make a comment because I know your businesses, and despite the fact that you are large in size and number of employees, there's a tremendous people orientation. And that's remarkable, given the size of your businesses, that you've created that healthy, positive, inclusive culture in both cases, which is why I was delighted to invite both of you on the call. But also, I wanted to get your philosophies about what will office life be like going forward? What's your philosophy about, you mentioned hybrid, Claudia, what does the world look like in a few months' time in terms of office space and use?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, because the Sky offices are incredible. You walk in, it's so impressive. You know, you've got Sky News that's being filmed in the middle of the atrium. It's just a great place to be. And they've created a campus, right? So we're based in Isleworth, and you've got everything from, you know, 6 restaurants on site, a gym, a hair salon. You know, it's just, yeah, it's a very impressive space. I mean, I haven't had the opportunity to travel around to various offices in the country, but in terms of the Sky Central offices, it's pretty impressive. So how do we ensure that, as I said to you, that still becomes an environment where people want to come to work, but we introduce that ability of, we introduce the concept of flexibility, right? So where it was a 5-day week, unless you were sort of contracted to work part-time, how do we ensure that we get to a point where we're comfortable for people to do sort of 3 days in the office and then 2 days working from home or from another location, and just introducing some principles or around, if you've got people in the office and on Teams, how do you make sure that it's a great experience for those that are on the phone? These are the things that we need to start to think about, because initially it worked fine because everybody was on Teams. So you know, in terms of this sort of forum now, it makes it a lot easier. But I've also experienced being on the other end of it, where you've got people in the office and you're on Teams, and how do you make sure that it's a great experience for those that are not in the room? So look, I think the future of, in particular at Sky, is we recognise the environment helps. It's creative. It helps to generate ideas, and as I said before, we don't want to lose that magic. But I think the future for us is accepting that there will be some flexibility, more intended flexibility than maybe they had before, which is sort of that sort of 3-day week in the office and the rest working from home, and just ensuring that, we have that flexibility front of mind. But for me, as my own personal view, is I think remote working has never been more relevant. That as my own personal view, I think remote working has never been more relevant. And you hear about people considering moving out of London and now being based in the country because they can work from home. And I think if we had, and this isn't particular to Sky, but I just think if there's any leaders, CEOs that had reluctance about encouraging remote working for sort of predominantly office-based employees, I think this pandemic has showed us it can be done. the executive team at Sky are great, but I know that when I talk to friends and other people within my network, there have been some leaders within their organisations that had a real reluctance to remote working. It was almost, you had to be seen to be in the office working 5 days a week, and that's how your output was measured. But I think this pandemic has showed it can be done. So, for me, the future is people changing their mindsets and promoting and encouraging that remote working, that flexible working, which may seem, standard in other organisations, but not everybody's there yet. So I think that's where the opportunity lies.
Thank you. Sam, the philosophy that is your philosophy as well, of course, as Nomad Foods.
And I agree with Claudia that we not only proved it can be done, we're living it, we're breathing it every day. So I don't think it's a question about whether or not people can or can't work from home. I think there's a number of factors we'll need to consider when we're thinking about the longer term. And those are individual factors. Some people are not enjoying it. Some people may not be set up for the longer term to work from home. So you've got individual, then you've got your team needs. So again, building on that point about, bouncing off one another and coming together. And then we've got the needs of the business, which we've got to put at the forefront of mind because we need to continue a healthy organisation. Where that leads me in my thinking about what the future could look like is, yes, I believe a balance is the right thing with the blending of working from home and working from office. But I like to think of it as a bit broader than that. So it's not around us saying, okay, you must be in the office 3 days or you must work from home 2 days. I think it's about giving people choice, because what people have really benefited from in this crisis and lockdown is that they've had, other than the fact they've got to stay at home, they've had choice in how they manage their personal lives. And suddenly asking everyone to come back into the workplace is going to deprive them of some of that choice. I think as employers, we need to come out of this with really clear purpose. And at Nomad Foods, we've got a company purpose, and I think we can leverage that to really build on some of the stuff I was talking about earlier around, the pride in our products, bring the factory teams and the commercial teams together around that, but then also have clarity as to what we expect through a framework, and trust. And trust is going to be a big part of how we continue to operate. We've given everybody this trust. They're all doing goodness knows what in their own homes, but surprisingly managing to do the job, to some kind of leaders' confusion, I think, in the early days. But when we think about our leaders and helping as HR professionals to navigate what that future looks like, we've really got to set out what does success look like and how we can facilitate that. Because historically, as many of us do, you carry on working in the way that's given you success over the years. And actually what we need to have success in the future might be something different. And it's our role as HR professionals to help to figure out what that might look like and equip our line managers and leaders to manage in a more ambiguous, ever-changing environment, because I don't think it stops here as we come out of COVID either.
Thank you. You may not know this, actually. We know each other in terms of, I know you, Sam, I know you, Claudia, for a number of years now. And you might not know that my last corporate role, even though it was many years ago, was in HR. And I was global HR manager for a huge company like yourselves, 14,000 staff. And we had this incredible dynamic where the business, before I was in that role, decided to put an American HR leader in our St. Petersburg office, and a very traditional mindset about how offices should be. The Russian GM said every leader has to be in the office before the rest of the staff and leave after they've left. And the young, dynamic American HR leader said we should allow staff to choose, and we should be more flexible, and it should be more hybrid, to use the language you're talking about now. And that classic either or, I think, used to be the way of businesses. We all must be in the office if you're an office worker. It has to change. That's what I'm hearing from you. This hybrid was the word you used, Claudia, is the future. It's the present, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And look, Sam's right. It is about choice, and it's been interesting actually, because some people have thrived working from home, but some people's home setup doesn't facilitate working from home, and they're desperate to come back into the office. And that's where Sam's point about choice is a crucial one. And I think, yeah, for me, it's flexibility as well. That's the key word here. And again, before, people associated flexibility with if you're a parent and you've got childcare responsibilities or caring responsibilities, that's where you were able to work flexibly. Whereas now, irrespective of that, flexibility just needs to be the word in terms of start and finish times and days of, the days that you work. And I think the key part really is just, we've seen it, that output productivity, high standard of performance is still there, irrespective of people either being in the office or working from home. So that needs to be the mindset that we take into the future.
Yeah, I have one. Oh, go on, Sam.
I was just going to say the office, I think in the future we can consider it as another tool that we use. So it's, amongst all of the tech we've got, offices, we need to just find people recognizing it as a place that's useful.
Yeah, I want to call out, because we haven't talked about it, one of the things that makes both of your businesses special is the level of quality communication that's come from your leaders to your staff in this time. And that's whether that be from the HR function, but especially from the big leaders in your business, the CEOs of your business have been so active in and weekly messaging. No silence. Over
daily.
It's been fantastic. Daily. It's brilliant. And I know that from people who work for your organization, saying, wow, I am clear where we're at, even though some of the other elements of life are uncertain. I'm certain about what Nomad Foods are doing, and I'm certain about what Sky. That's highly commendable. It's why I invited you guys on the call, but I also invited you because of who you are as people leaders. You stand out in my client experience of working for businesses as open-minded, great storytellers about the journey we want to take our people on. What would you say, and it's my concluding question, what would you say is the most distinctive difference about work-life 2021? So not just now, because we're still sorting ourselves out, but when things are more clear, what will be the most distinctive difference about work life, in particular office space work life?
Sam, do you want to go first on that one?
Go ahead, Claudia.
Oh, no, I was asking, do you want to go first?
No, I'll go first then. I think the offices will become collaboration spaces, and I think that will be one of the biggest shifts. How we get there to offices truly being considered and embedded as collaboration spaces, I'm not sure, and I'm working that out now. I think one of the lasting legacies of the crisis that we've been in will be an increase in health and safety and hygiene standards everywhere. And even at the end of 2021, I suspect we'll still have an increased awareness. So I think there will be more focus on the health and well-being. Whilst many companies have done it well over the last few years, it's been a campaign of wellness. Actually, wellness needs to become the norm and not a specific pillar of a strategy or a campaign, because coming out of this, there will be people that will continue to be afraid that something else will hit us in 2021. Beyond 2021, I think we need to really start to think now about, let's assume with a positive intent that by the end of 2021 we'll be able to stand next to each other and not have social distancing in place. I think as HR leaders we need to start planning for that now, so we can start shaping that rather than let it just drift and become a new norm that we haven't shaped and created ourselves.
Sam, thank you. What struck me is that the new norm won't be, I arrive at work, I do my job, and I go home. It will be much more mindful. more collaboration, more conscious of my impact on others around me. And that feels a better place. Claudia, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think everything that Sam said, spot on. I think also this has been a business unusual time for us, but the shift will be, this will be considered to be business as usual, and that's the difference. It feels very different now because of we are dealing with the pandemic and it was all very unknown. But how we are operating today will just be considered to be the new norm. And I think when you ask that question, what goes through my mind is technology and how we best maximize that to make sure that we can really drive the right ways of working and continue to drive productivity and ease how we do business. How we work together as a team. I also think communication, that has been, and I know it sounds like an obvious and an easy one, but you can't underestimate how important it is to make sure you stay connected with your teams, with your customers, stay connected as a business. So I think how we continue to improve communication will be something that's a key focus for 2021. And yeah, just I think, I have mentioned it before, but just that ability to be hybrid, I can't stress that enough, because that for me is the new world, in particular the context of Sky, because that's not how they've operated in the past. And that will be a shift to how they've, things have worked previously. And, the one thing as well, I think, is just the support that we give to our people leaders, because they have my learning, and it's different from where I used to work, which I know you're familiar with, is the number of layers that we have within the organization, and how do you make sure that the comms filters all the way through, and the people leaders have a responsibility to be able to do that. So how we equip our managers and our people leaders to manage disparate workforces, and make sure that they are able to connect through communication and technology and all of that. I think we need to continue to upskill them so they are able to operate in that way and make sure that they stay connected to their team. So these are things that are happening, but how do we make sure that piece just keeps, we keep supporting that opportunity to upskill them? I think in the future is a key one.
I think that's a great point. And if I may, just building on that, thinking about the new skills that are required for everybody, right from team member through to leader, in a virtual, flexible work, I think touches on every aspect of people's jobs. And I don't think we can underestimate that we've got to have that base, because if without it, we won't set ourselves up for the future.
And one thing that's absolutely clear is how companies and how leaders have shown up in the last 3 or 4 months determines the degree of loyalty of their people beyond it. And that's why both Sky and Nomad Foods are standout examples of how you should be in this situation and beyond it. So thank you so much for sharing some of those experiences, but also the philosophy of what's next. It's been great.